On today's World Insight, European capitals streamline their China policy. What does Rome have in mind? Our panel provides a hint on the sidelines of the Chinese president's visit there. And global business leaders, a few hundred strong, gather in Beijing over the weekend. Trade dispute, China's economy, and the vision of the future amid uncertainty. We ask people in the know.
Has handled the trade dispute very well. It's very firm on principles, but flexible on specifics.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Monday to Friday from Beijing. Let's begin our show today with the latest on President Xi Jinping's visit to Europe. President Xi has started his three-nation tour in Italy. Italian President Sergio Mattarella rolled out the red carpet for his counterpart from China on Friday. Much of the discussions are expected to focus on cultural exchange and trade, as well as infrastructure. Let's take a look.
A new chapter of relations between ancient civilizations of the East and West. Chinese President Xi Jinping is on his first overseas trip this year in Rome. Italian President Sergio Mattarella welcomed him at the presidential palace of Quirinale.
China and Italy have both made significant contributions to the cultural exchanges between the East and the West. The old Silk Road was the whole embodiment of the ancestors' pursuit of a good life. It promoted connections between Europe and Asia and ushered in a new chapter of history of extensive exchanges. Today, we would like to join hands with the friendly Italian people to promote the mutual construction of each culture, seek win-win cooperation to rejuvenate the old Silk Road, and make people of all nations enjoy the fruits of development.
During his stay, President Xi will also meet with Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. They are expected to sign a memorandum of understanding for cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative. But even before the visit, Italian businesses have already been active participants in the program, which include a co-designed offshore deep-water port in Venice and the China Railway Express connecting major Italian cities like Naples and Milan. Before President Xi's arrival, an Italian newspaper published his article on a new chapter of bilateral relations. 2019 is the milestone year for the two countries. They are celebrating the 15th anniversary of a comprehensive strategic partnership, and next year will be the 50th anniversary of diplomatic ties. Italy is China's fifth largest trading partner in the European Union, and China is Italy's largest trading partner in Asia. In 2018, the bilateral trade volume exceeded $50 billion, and two-way investments were worth more than $20 billion. Meanwhile, cultural and educational exchanges are flourishing. Italy is the first stop of President Xi's trip. His next is Monaco and then France.
For more on the ties of China and Italy, we are joined in New York by Maria Adelicale, who is a fellow at the Italian Academy of Advanced Studies at Columbia University. Also, we are joining in our Beijing studio Cui Hongjian, Director of the Department for European Studies from China Institute of International Studies. Welcome to both of you. I want to start by asking you, Ms. Kale, what do you make of Italy's choice at this quite critical juncture that it is hosting the Chinese president in such a warm way and talking about as much cooperation as possible?
Yeah, so I think it's potentially a great opportunity. It depends how it's handled. And I am a lawyer as a background, and I'm very interested in the memorandum of understanding that are about to sign. And I think sometimes by the media, this memorandum of understanding has been misunderstood. Memorandum of understanding is not legally binding, but it is the beginning of a process of cooperation. And Italy should do so in cooperation with the European Union, and that's clearly stated in the draft that is available of the Memorandum of Understanding. And also with the United States, you consider also the concern of United States about Italy joining the Belt and Road Initiative. And another thing is that there is a lot of continuity. And if you look at like the recent history, Monti went to Beijing in 2012, and before Xi Jinping launched the Belt and Road Initiative officially,
right,
it already started to discuss cooperation, for instance, with the third countries like in Africa. And Renzi, when he was in power in 2016, said that Italy was ready to join the Belt and Road Initiative. And Gentiloni was one of the few head of state from Europe that went to join the forum of the Belt and Road Initiative in Beijing. So it's not a rupture of Italy relations with China. It's not a grand new start. There is a lot of continuity here.
Yes, indeed. Now we are also joined by Nicola Casarini, who is the head of the program for Asia at the Institute of International Affairs in Italy. We want to welcome you, sir. Help us to understand.
Thank you.
What about Italy's choice? Now, we have Ms. Calais help us to step back and look at the past history about China-Italy interactions to indicate it's not an abrupt decision, not at all. But what about from your perspective, particularly now when you have quite rather negative coverage in some of the Western media about Italy getting closer, quote unquote, to China? What is Italy having in mind?
Well, thank you for having me. Italy wants to achieve a few things with this. Economically, more market access in China for Italian products, in particular the Made in Italy products, but also more Chinese investments in the Belt and Road Initiative. But those things could have happened even without the signature of the Memorandum of Understanding. So what it is important is what it is not written in the Memorandum of Understanding, which explains why Italy wants to do is seeking closer relations with Beijing. What it is not written in the memorandum, which is contained in the kind of like red carpet that Italy has done for President Xi Jinping, is closer ties with China that has massive foreign reserves, so which could help Italy in the future should turbulence in international markets happen, but also like to have a friend, a powerful friend like China, because the government in Italy now has become increasingly isolated in Europe. They have come up with a Eurosceptic narrative. They have antagonized the EU as well as France and Germany. So they need friends abroad. The only close ally is Trump. So I think there are like both economic and strategic reasons. Economic because they want to have a powerful economic new friend, China, but also strategically.
Ms. Kara, I want to cut back to you as well about that. Now, every country has chosen the way it wants to deal with its own future and its counterparts. Italy certainly has also made its choice this time. Not only this time, but also in its history in relation with the U.S., other European capitals, and China, of course, as well. Now, one of the things that's very important that people do not necessarily be able to look at the wide range of issues that China and Italy are and can work together, not only about the Belt and Road, but rather about politics, about cultural exchanges, about trade, about academic and technological exchanges. All of these are actually happening on the relationship between the two countries. Now, that is probably a fact that many have failed to observe closely. Ms. Karai.
Yeah, certainly there are so many different aspects for possible cooperation between China and Italy, and they date back a long time. I think, though, that the approach of the Italian government has been to focus mostly on the economic aspects, and I think also the signature of the Belt and Road Initiative has been more, or joining the Belt and Road Initiative has been more perceived as bringing economic advantages to Italy rather than political. While I think that for China it's more of a political move to have the support of Italy, which is still the first G7 country to sign the Memorandum of Understanding, is not the first country in Europe to sign a Memorandum of Understanding with China regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. But definitely also in the article, in the letter of Xi Jinping that was reported in Corriere della Sera, Xi Jinping discussed these broad aspects that range from culture, technology, science, industry. So there are definitely many opportunities here. And it's really about how this will play out. And for me, the key positive aspect for Italy now is to really develop a strategy toward China.
I see.
And I think before it was lacking a proper strategy toward China. And now Michele Gerati, the Undersecretary of State in the Ministry of Economic Development, also created this task force to deal with China.
Right.
And hopefully this will be in unity with the European Union policy. There's nothing in Conte's speech or like other officials that opposes European Union broader strategy.
Yeah.
Of course,
Mr. Casarini, as I remember very clearly, Marco Polo once said that it's only half of the story that I saw in his famous book when he was recounting hundreds of years ago about what he saw in ancient China. Now, probably what the media has been reporting is only probably a small proportion of what's going on between China and Italy. Should we fail to see the bigger picture? What is the danger of failing to see the bigger picture?
That's a very big and important question. You're hitting the right point, because the Western media in particular has concentrated on the economic commercial dimension. This is what the Italian government would like a public opinion, but also the United States, for instance, to believe. But in reality, we have here also a political and strategic element. As I was saying before, the Italian government now is quite isolated in Europe, which means that it is easier for this Italian government to seek closer ties with Beijing, given the situation. At the same time, what they are trying to do is also get things which are not in the Memorandum of Understanding. The financial dimension is very, very important. Italian economy is in a downward trend, which means that soon we may see turbulence in financial markets, speculation again against Italian debt. At that point, to have some friends in the world as financially powerful as China could help.
All right. Well, certainly Mr. Casarini have a different view about the current administration in Italy. One could clearly tell.
Yes.
However, Mr.
Yes.
Cui,
I do.
Despite of what administration is in the office, Mr. Cui, China seems to have a very continuous different kind of strategies toward Italy over the years. Is this a continuity? Is there much to be surprised of, quote unquote, Mr. Cui?
We need to understand, I mean, not only the long history between China and Italy in history to, have developed the, better relations. And we do need to understand the value of this cooperation.
What is exactly
if we still remember that 15 years ago, Italy is the first European countries to establish a governmental level, exchange mechanism with China. It's the first one. So I think, yes, now it's time, after 15 years, to revival this very, very strong cooperation. But of course, I do understand the concern from our guest about the BRI, especially MOU itself. But I don't think that MOU would be a critical or issue for this cooperation. Once we have some more cooperation, once we have more projects jointly, I think that's enough. But of course, the MOU itself is a kind of a reflection of this level or kind of mutual trust between China and Italy. So I do believe that once we have some more pragmatic cooperation, there will be some other concerns about that.
But Mr. Cui, I have to point here, and it's a matter of fact, that Italy is not the first one among the European countries to sign the MOU to be signed, likely on Saturday. With China, there are already a bunch of them, more than 10, have already done that. And it's very unlikely that Italy will be last among the European countries to do that either. So why is a big fuss? I mean, from a Chinese perspective, how do you read the quote-unquote the big fuss that is going on right now?
If we look at what happened recently, I mean, for this cooperation between China and the European countries in the frame of BRI, yes, undoubtedly, so far Italy is the largest economy in European countries to be a part of BRI, and also, of course, if you take some other dimension to look at this, you can also find out some other, important sense, including the first G7 country and also one of the co-member states of the European Union and the Eurozone. But no matter what happened, I think it's a very, very natural. It's a result for a natural process, because so far already 13 European countries with the MOU with China, and also I think last year the two southern European countries, Portugal and Greece, they are joined into this BRI. So I think it's very natural for Italy, and also yes, as our Italian guest mentioned, so far it's good time and opportunity for Italy to deal with some domestic economic challenge.
Well, of course, everybody made their choice because of something, right? That's what they call the win-win situation, isn't it? Mr. Casareni, if I could ask you about that, in Europe's history, if we talk a little bit about history, the Italian friends will love it, right? I mean, if you look at the relationship between China and France, 55 years ago, France established diplomatic relations with China despite some of the oppositions from the Western allied countries. And if you look at Switzerland, too, which is a neutral country, also established a relationship with China very early in the day. It's a big economy in the world. So the question really is not about what these countries are trying to do, but rather whether countries are sensitive enough to sense, in a way, what's to come and grasp the opportunity to their advantage. That's always what countries do, and it's about whether countries have that capability and want to accept those capabilities. Mr. Casareni.
This is an excellent observation. I totally agree. We had France, for instance, in 2003, 2004, when President Chirac was in power, that, if we remember, was the one more advocating the lifting of the arms embargo, for instance. It was the time of the EU-China strategic partnership. We had cooperation in space technology, Galileo, and Europeans even wanted to sell arms to China, and France was in the lead. They were sensing this kind of like a new strategic landscape. Then things have changed. Now France has become much more transatlantic in a way, starting with Sarkozy and with Macron, whereas Italy now is sensing that a new wave is coming, and that's why Italy decided to endorse the Belt and Road Initiative. I just wanted to say one thing on the memorandum. This is a kind of particular memorandum of understanding. We can call it a second generation MOU. Why? Because it includes Western norms and principles. It makes a clear reference to the European Union Connectivity Strategy for Eurasia, published in September 2018. So second generation MOU better fit for, let's say, advanced nations, G7 nations. And I think this is the key element to underline.
Very interesting point over there. If you talk about the memorandum, let's talk a little bit more in detail, even though I haven't read even the draft of it because it's only coming out later this week. But Ms. Karai, given the knowledge that you know, there are several points at least. For example, development of the ports, such as Genoa and Trieste, and also there's roads, airports, telecommunications, and many other infrastructure projects likely to be included. Now, once again, I do not have the inside information about it, only from public information revealed through the media. So, Ms. Karai, help us to understand, to what extent will this help Italy to make sure it had its stone ready before the arch is being built? Once again, I want to quote Marco Polo, hundreds of years ago. He said that everything starts from the stone before the arch comes into being.
Yeah, and I can definitely see some synergies with infrastructures, especially after Genoa bridge collapse, the tragedy that happened in Italy. And I think Italy needs, is part also of the government plan to invest in infrastructure, and it needs capital to do that. And so I think here is where China could come in. And also another aspect that, I mean, China could potentially help is to develop Italian ports. In the past 2 decades, there was an increase of trade in goods with ships like of 500%, and Italy just grew 50%, Italian ports, traffic of goods via ports. And I think, you know, if China helped developing Trieste and Genoa ports, it would be good for Italy. But also, I think that there will be a huge opportunity to develop the south of Italy with infrastructure, which is really, really lacking railroads, and so this could be a positive aspect. And also, I think there is a focus on greenfield infrastructure investments. Because in the past, I mean, Belt and Road Initiative is already, if you want, in Europe and in Italy, because China has invested a lot of money, including in Germany and France, and it has already bought a lot of companies, did merger and acquisition. And I think what we would like to see, I think, in Italy is also increased investments in greenfield that really brings capital and create new structures, brings jobs, hire Italians. So that actually would be very positive. And I think there's possibility to do that according to high standards of rules, you know, protection of intellectual property, be careful with know-how and technology transfer.
Right. Mr. Cui, as you can tell through Ms. Carai's explanation, Italy is very inspired in a way about the current stage of development of the second generation memorandum, as our other guest put it, and also try to seek a road out of its current challenges. Now, Mr. Cui, to you, we see similar picture in Greece. Also the development of the ports. Now, with partnerships being built, for example, with China, that port has managed to increase 5-fold since the start of this cooperation. That's quite amazing. I'm not saying things will be copied into other places, but I'm just saying that, Mr. Cui, when China is trying to build this kind of partnership, what does China have in mind? And how is China likely to do it? Will it be from the private sector or from the state-owned enterprises? Or will there be further cooperation with the local counterparts? How does that work? And how will make it sustainable and good for the local people there, whether in the ports or somewhere else in the country?
I think Chinese perspective and also solution would be as pragmatic as possible. As we know, there are full of the diversities, I mean, among European countries. Even now they are in the European Union, mostly. So I think that not only this Chinese resolution, and also China will be open to any kind of a solution from Italy, from other partners. If we look at what happened recently, China indeed accepted some concept and also some solutions like PPP. As we know, PPP...
Public-private partnership, just to explain.
Right. PPP itself is from Europe originally. So I think if we understand the real, I mean, aspiration of BRI, we would have more optimistic about the future.
Now, Mr. Casarini, let me ask you about this. This is a critical juncture, right? We all understand every country is trying to examine what is going on in the world and which role shall I take? What kind of partnerships shall we build? What do you think should be the barometers for Italy, for others as well in Europe, according to you, when they consider this question and make their decisions? Very briefly from you, sir.
But of course, they will have to take into consideration economic and political considerations, but also, as you mentioned before, the sustainability, environmental, labor standards, etc. But let me give you one observation which could also help in figuring out what could be the future of this Italy-China MOU. This government is the perfect government for signing the MOU, but not for implementing the MOU. Why? The Chinese will soon discover that the senior partner in the coalition, the Five-Star Movement, which is very much pro-China, is also the party which is blocking big infrastructure projects, including the high-speed rail network meant to connect the ports of Genoa and Trieste to northern Europe, which means that for the Chinese government, it will be possibly
going on with your argument, sir, but we have very limited time, so I have to give the others as well. So you have concerns whether implementation will be done. Let me go to you, Ms. Cartwright, about what do you think should be some of the barometers that countries, when they choose partnerships and also when they try to implement partnerships, for example, this one between China and Italy, should they look at when it comes to the barometers? Briefly from you too.
I couldn't hear very well the question. Sorry, I missed the first part.
Barometers when they make decisions about partnerships.
Oh, I think, again, Italy should consider like high standards of governance and as Casarani said, like in terms of labor rights and be vigilant about what we give to China, and and I think we should really try to foster reciprocity. This is a word that comes back over and over that is also promoted by China. So I think high standard, reciprocity, and growing together a bit.
Okay, let's give also some time left for our Chinese guests. Just to be fair, Mr. Cui.
There will be no any question about how could China also achieve a progress in this cooperation, because so far China is still developing countries, and Italy is undoubtedly a developed country. So we do need to learn something more, especially very useful, pragmatic, experience from this cooperation with Italy.
Not only to learn, but also to probably exchange as well.
Sure.
Well, that's what partnership is about, isn't it? It's not about one side asking conditions from the other, but rather both sides sees a win-win to come. Thank you so much for the three of you for joining us for this win-win conversation, I guess. Nicholas Zaccarini, Maria Cartwright, and Cui Hongjian. Thank you. Stay with us here on World Insight with me still to come on our program. Global business leaders, a few hundred strong, together in Beijing over the weekend. Trade dispute, China's economy, and the vision of the future amid uncertainty. We ask people in the know right after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The Chinese Commerce Ministry announced this week that the new round of trade negotiations between China and the U.S. will be held in Beijing from March the 28th to 29th. After several rounds of negotiations, it's difficult to speculate on the outcome of this round of talks, but the upcoming annual meeting of the China Development Forum in Beijing from March the 23rd to 25th could be a hint. Heads of top 500 companies from around the world, senior officials from different countries, as well as scholars, including many CEOs coming from the U.S., will participate in this forum. Earlier, I talked to Fang Jin, the Deputy Secretary General of China Development Research Foundation, who was busy preparing for the forum. He's looking forward to it as a chance for China and the U.S. to exchange views as well. Dr. Fang, what a pleasure to see you in Beijing. With the upcoming China Development Forum, I'm sure you're having some very busy days these days. But tell me about how will this forum be able to help and support the ongoing process of discussion and negotiation between China and the United States?
Well, the two countries are engaged in very intense negotiations, which are expected to be concluded very soon. We hear very positive messages from both governments. But this forum is not about negotiations per se, but rather it's a platform of dialogue between senior Chinese government officials and national business leaders.
Right.
We believe such a dialogue can be conducive to the improvement of the atmosphere between China and other countries, especially in the business community.
But Dr. Fang, as you may know, even inside the American decision-maker circles, there are different opinions about what approach to take toward China. So do you think those topics will also pop up during this year's forum?
Most of the CEOs who come to our forum, they support closer engagement with China in a constructive manner. Maybe some of them do have complaints about market access, about equal treatment, but they want to engage with China in a constructive manner. After all, very often represent their top 3 markets in the world for most of international businesses. So Chinese market is very important to them, and they have been very successful in the past. Even though they may have some problems with the current regulations or implementation of those regulations, but they still want to engage with China in a very positive, constructive manner.
The updated foreign investment law, which came out right after the 2 sessions this year, is a very important piece of legislation. Many foreign investors are looking very closely. Now, Dr. Fang, help us to understand from your perspective, what's new and what might serve investors better in China?
The passing of the new foreign investment law is a very positive development. It can serve at least 3 purposes from my perspective. First, it unified and updated all regulations and laws governing foreign investment from the past. It streamlined the legal process, reduced distortions, so that's good for foreign investor. And secondly, it created more protection for foreign investment, and also more equitable market access for foreign investment, which is also one of the biggest concerns made by foreign investors in the past. And whenever you have a stronger protection of property rights, you will see investment flourish. Yes. And that's, I think, the intent of this new law. Thirdly, many people may not notice, the new law also allowed provisions for national security review of foreign investment. This is common practice actually in many advanced countries. I think by having such a specific provision in the new law, it actually creates more transparent and predictable environment for foreign investors to make decisions.
But I'm sure, Dr. Fang, about the implementation issue and also detailed regulations to follow up in order to accommodate this principled law are likely to be topics very hot debated at the forum to come.
Yes, some people argue that China has very good policies in principle, but sometimes they lack specifics or specifics don't match with the principle. The problem stems from twofold. One is lack of capacity, maybe in the administrative side of the government. The other is still that we need to overcome a vested interest. As reform has progressed over the last 40 years, the easy pickings of reform have already been taken, and it's harder to reach consensus now because there is growing divergence of interests. But I think if there's only one country in the world that can overcome such a challenge, then it is China, because we have very strong leadership at the top who is determined to take actions, and we have a very centralized administrative system that can carry out those decisions without much discount. So I think actually one of the advantages of our system, that we can overcome vested interests, overcome short-sightedness for the sake of long-term benefit for the whole country.
We'll see how those advantages, in your words, will play out in the latter half of the year. Talking about China, in the 2018 government work report, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang set the GDP growth target for this year at between 6 and 6.5%. He also emphasized the 3 tough battles: financial risks, poverty alleviation, and environmental pollution. They are China's biggest challenges, and he missed no words about deepening reform and opening up. Although slower economic growth is inevitable in regulating the economy, many say are concerned about China's next step. But as engine of the growth of the world economy, what China aspires to do. I talked to Dr. Fang also about that. Dr. Fang, all of this is happening with the backdrop of the Chinese economy slowing down. Are you concerned as a researcher and as the organizer of this annual forum in which biggest names from the business world are coming about China's growth potential and the quality of the growth potential?
I do sense actually a change in economic sentiment from one of anxiety and uncertainty from last year to one of cautious optimism and confidence this year.
Explain, please.
The reason is very simple. I think, to the credit of Chinese government, they took notice and they took very decisive actions to dispel such anxiety and uncertainty by introducing drastic reform and opening up measures, which restored confidence. You can see the stock market is up recently.
What are the measures that you're talking about here?
Well, opening up measures have been announced in several rounds since last year. And the government has also made it very clear about the protection of property rights and intellectual property rights, and providing equal treatment to enterprises from all ownership structures, whether they're SOE, they're private owned or foreign. And that has made a lot of people very reassured. That's why the confidence, I think, is restored to some extent. And you talk about the confidence of international investors and foreign businesses. Actually, this year we have a record turnout of both foreign delegates and foreign CEOs. It's actually a 20% increase over the previous record. I think that shows, first of all, the importance of Chinese market to international business, but also it shows in times of uncertainty, people actually want to communicate and exchange views more, to reassure each other, I guess.
And also to feel the pulse of real China.
Yes.
How is China going to be more confident about the quality of growth?
I think the success of China over the past 40 years is basically built upon reform and opening up. As long as we continue that process, everything will take care of itself.
Even if other countries are trying to decouple with the Chinese economy?
First of all, it's very difficult to decouple from China. China is so engaged with the world culturally, economically, and politically, unlike Soviet Union, in the Cold War, where it had only 1% of world trade. In China is totally different, and China is not inward-looking. So despite maybe some hardliners in the West trying to decouple from China, China is not going to do so.
Will China continue to be patient and well-controlled in its approach toward the other parties?
I think the government has handled the trade dispute very well. It's very firm on principles, but flexible on specifics. That has also reduced a lot of uncertainty in China and around the world.
I mean, you've been working here for quite some time. What is your takeaway of these years? How is that reflecting, to the others who are attending the forum, the mindset of the Chinese these days?
I think, China Development Forum was set up in year 2000, right before China was about to join WTO. So it's interesting, if you divide the past 40 years of China's history or China's development into two phases, maybe one pre-WTO, one post-WTO, you can see in the first phase, before China joined WTO, the opening up of China has made a tremendous impact on China itself, on its economic development, on people's psyche, but not the other way around. But post-WTO, I think the influence or the impact went both ways. China is now so important. That's why you see at the beginning of our forum, it was very small in attendance, very low-key. but now we have a record turnout and higher profile participation year after year. I think it's a testament.
And a ticket to the forum is hard to acquire.
Yes, by invitation only.
Now, Dr. Fang, before we go, what do you think will be the goal of this year's forum? Once achieved, that is a successful one.
This year's theme of our forum is actually opening up further for common benefit. So I think if we have a very lively, very candid discussion, if they can learn the latest policy development in China, and at the same time all the foreign delegates can make positive contribution or even suggestions to Chinese development, I think that would be the ultimate measure of our success.
I know you have to run for your work. For now, thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Fang Jin talking about the upcoming China Development Forum in Diaoyutai in Beijing. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Inside CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Inside team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. The weekend is up. Have a good one, everyone. Good night.